Okay, Ironman Nice World Champs 2023 race recap. Let's go. Amy, hit that montage.
Hold on, Tom. He's running the same pace, basically. You're 15. Keep going. Fill your hat with ice. Go on, Ross. You're doing
Okay, strap yourselves in. This could be a long one. So I'm going to start with the day before the race. On Saturday, I did my usual sort of admin related to obviously putting your bike and bags in transition. I was also able to get a sweat test done at Precision Fuel and Hydration with Emily, which actually led to some small changes to my plan come race day. And one of the big learnings that I had was I'm not a salty sweater as I thought. I'd always put myself in the middle when planning training and racing nutrition, but I actually was quite far down on the low end. And this meant that I was able to tweak my plan slightly, that I didn't need as concentrated mix of electrolytes and sodium in my bottles. I thoroughly recommend getting one of those done. I also managed to did my usual sort of 20-minute run around the harbour and the I Love Nice sign. Felt pretty good, first time back in the race shoes, and kind of get that momentum and sort of feeling, which was good. And then popped out for a quick, I think it's about 45-minute bike session, although it wasn't a session, bike ride with Amy. And we basically climbed out of Nice, came back around the coast and back to transition. Legs felt good, I felt pretty good, and I was raring to go. Also had the pre-race meal standard of pizza, pre-race. I went a bit rogue and had a smoked salmon pizza, which is not something I normally do, but it was delicious. Went through the normal sort of stuff I do pre-Ironman. The night before, I slept pretty well. We unfortunately had booked accommodation that didn't have air conditioning, so sleeping was a bit difficult in the few days we were in that apartment. But I actually went to bed pretty early, about 8, half 8, and woke up at 4:30 and basically slept through the night. So had plenty of sleep and was ready to go. Race morning, I had my standard sort of overnight oats, few blueberries, bit of peanut butter, and started to sip on, I always have a litre of fluid with 2 1500 sachets in it. Made my way down to transition for just after 5 o'clock. Transition opened at 5 o'clock. Quite surprised how quiet it was. I like to get there early, but I'd been warned that there would be quite a big queuing system to get into transition. But I kind of missed that. Got into transition, set my bike up, said hello to some familiar faces, and was then able to sort of chill for a good 90 minutes before the race started. Obviously got to see the pros start and the wave before. Bit of advice for anyone doing Nice in the future, whether it's the World Champs or probably the race anyway, that once you go into transition, it's very hard to see your friends and family, the way that it's laid out with the beach, etc. So once you're in, you're kind of in and stuck. Race morning, it was declared a non-wetsuit swim, which I was hoping for. Not because I'm an uber swimmer or anything like that, but from swimming earlier in the week in my wetsuit in the water, it definitely was quite hot. Got down into the pen and I bumped into the familiar face of Tom Bill, and that really settled me down a little bit. I'd been wandering around for about an hour, not really know where to sit, who to talk to, what to do. And as soon as I saw Tom, familiar face, it sort of put my mind and kind of nerves at ease a bit. We had the usual sort of pre-race chat, sort of what are your goals for the day, blah 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 blah. His goal was to beat me, my goal was to beat him. And then yeah, we made our way to the start line. We actually started 30 so meters into the water, so it's a deep water start. For anyone not familiar with the Nice beach, it kind of goes out for a few meters and then drops off like a shelf. I felt pretty good swimming and thought I was swimming reasonably well. It definitely felt much faster out than it did back. I definitely struggled with sighting, as the course is actually like slightly angled. You don't just swim straight out and straight back to the shore. So going out was kind of okay because you were sort of following people. But coming back in was a bit tricky because you see buildings on the shoreline and sort of aim for those, but you actually needed to be coming in at an angle, and I sort of struggled with that. There definitely was a lack of buoys from my perspective. You know, racing in Finland, we had a buoy every 100 meters and it was brilliant. In Nice, I think there was only like 3 buoys in a 900 meter stretch, and they were quite small. I also was struggling with my neck, so with the swim skin and tri-suit, I swam with my tri-suit done up, option 2 if you follow Andrew Horsfield Turner. And very early on I felt that my swim skin and tri-suit combo was starting to hurt my neck. I predominantly breathe to my left hand side, and from about 20 minutes in, I knew I was taking literally layers of skin off each time I was breathing and swimming. So came out the water just over an hour, sorry. So I was a little bit disappointed, as I definitely can swim faster than that, and I definitely left some time out there. But on race day itself, it is what it is. I had an extremely quick T1, which is a kind of feature of my racing. 15 places up in my age group and 75 places overall. Jump on the bike and away we go. That was all fairly smooth. And I know a lot of people will say this, but for the first 20 minutes of the bike, I felt horrendous. I had a swollen eye from having salt water in my goggles for pretty much the whole swim. My neck was on fire, and my legs generally were like, nah, this ain't happening today. And I've never experienced that in an Ironman or a race. I normally kind of feel brilliant when I get on the bike, and it's more a case of reining it in. And I generally was like, this is going to be a very long day. There was a no overtake zone from about 5k in for a k or 2, which was very annoying because there were some slower people that kind of held you up there. But I think that helped me a little bit because I didn't need to be pushing hard, and I kind of got held up a bit more than I would have liked, but it kind of let me settle in a little bit, had some chews, had some fluid. The first climb, by my reckoning, is definitely the steepest. It's by no means the longest. And I remember boys coming past me and I was thinking, wow, like I'm doing the best part of 5 watts a kilo here. We're 20 minutes into an Ironman. They're either monsters or this is going to, go wrong for certain people. I had a bit of an argument with a French dude who I overtook, and then he would overtake me and then block me. He was on a road bike. He shouted at me something like, "If you is stronger, you must go up the road." And yeah, I sort of was very pissed off with him for a bit. Number 210, I remembered him vividly. I looked him up afterwards and I outbiked him by half an hour. First climb was done, descended a bit, and it's a flat bit. At this point, my legs actually started to feel normal, and my sort of normal Ironman power sort of felt how it should do. I managed to catch a lot of the people that had overtaken me on the climb. They were obviously riding them much harder and not riding as hard on the sort of flatter downhill sections. So I then started to gain a bit of confidence that actually you're riding pretty well, and obviously I was overtaking people as I was doing it, although very aware that a lot of those people were in the age groups that had started well ahead. Got to the main climb. In my head it was going to be about an hour's worth of effort. I think it was about 56 minutes in total. But we descended in, it's a right turn onto the climb. You know when it's going to start, it's got all the typical sort of signs. I lapped my Garmin and I got to work basically. Now my goal was to kind of push close to 70.3 power up the climbs and try and ride sort of normal Ironman power / ride smartly on the faster sections. So when I am doing like 40, 50k an hour, don't push too hard and so forth. So up the first climb and the second climb, I did average 280. And that felt pretty good, and that definitely was strong in the sense that only one guy really rode away from me, and I dropped everyone else that I was with, and that felt obviously quite rewarding. By the time I got to about halfway, and definitely by the top of the climb, I was actually really surprised at how much the field had thinned out, in the sense that I wasn't even overtaking people that had started ahead of me now. I was basically riding kind of solo. There weren't people to ride with or chase or overtake frequently. After the top of the big climb, you get quite a lot of a flat / rolling section, and this out and back gave me a really good look at where I was in the race. And then that was the point where I started to think, actually this is going really well. We only had then one climb left to do, which was about 9k. In my head I had sort of just over a 20-minute effort, and got to the bottom of that climb. I thought this is where Ross does what he does. This is where he gets himself right in contention, and almost immediately the legs went nah, and I only could hold like 210 watts, which is below my Ironman power up that climb. Annoyingly, about 5 or 6 people that I'd kind of ridden away from and put some good time into came past me on that climb, and I reckon I lost about 4 or 5 minutes by not being able to ride kind of what I wanted to do. Luckily, near the top of that climb, Fraser Minican came past me, who I don't know him too well, but I know of him, and we had a bit of a brief chat. And it's so funny how somebody just saying your name or knowing you, and you have that 30-second, how you doing, you having a good day conversation, completely like pressed the switch in me, and all of a sudden I was able to hold like 300 watts. So I managed to convince myself to stay with Fraser basically, and we were only about a K, maybe 500 meters from the top of this climb, and once you get to the top of it, you've got the 50k section home, which a lot of it is downhill and technical. So managed to hold on to Fraser, managed to sort of chase him down the descent for the first half, and then on the second half of the descent there is a small climb for a few minutes. Managed to come past him, go up that climb reasonably well and carry on the descent, and actually managed to ride away from him a little bit. I also caught Tom Bill on the descent, which surprised me a little bit. You know, these are bigger guys. Normally a lighter guy like me would struggle on the descent, but then I knew I was handling my bike well, everything was kind of dialed in and great. Got down to the flat sections. At this point Fraser got back on and we kind of worked together back to transition, and I kind of then had gone from feeling like I'd kind of ruined my race on that climb to actually I'm right in this. Came into transition, had a reasonably good transition too. The legs definitely knew they'd done a hard bike ride, but once I got into the tent, put my running shoes on and took my stuff out on the run, it's amazing how quickly the sort of run legs come round. Managed to leave transition ahead of Fraser, which wasn't a goal, but I just thought, you know, I can get out, settle into my own rhythm and not keep chasing him. The first 3k were brilliant. Amy had shouted at me as I was coming in off the bike that I was 15th in my age group, which was a bit of a surprise, in the sense that I had a rough goal to be in the top 20 of my age group pre-race. I based that off how I performed in Finland, but with COVID and the lead into the race and how it would play out, I really wasn't sure if that was feasible or not. So to come in 15th, I think within the first K or through transition, I'd made up another couple of places. So I got up to 13th, and the split was only like 3 minutes to 10th, which I've never been in that scenario before in such a competitive field. And I was physically buzzing, and the pace for the first 3-4k was like bang on, sort of creeping under 3-hour marathon pace, which I knew would be super competitive, obviously, if that was sustainable for the whole run. Unfortunately, we got to the top end of the course, which is about 5-6k, so it's 4 loops that are just over 10k obviously, and Tom Bill came past me, and at that point in time, it was about 6k, I was having real problems with my heart. It's only ever happened once before. I think it was on my 30th birthday when I did a 30k run in the very hot weather back in COVID times. But I felt like someone was stabbing a knife through it, and I really was worried that I was, I don't know, having, dramatic wise, in the moment I thought I was having a heart attack. You can see on my splits I'd sort of ran 4:10s, 4:10, 4:15, and then the 6k is like a 4:53. Like, it's quite a significant drop off so early on in the marathon. And I said to Tom, it's your day, mate. We're a few minutes off the top 10. You crack on. I'm going to be walking in a bit. And I generally was thinking in a few K, I'm going to have to walk the rest of this marathon. And I was already starting to calculate how long it would take to walk 36k. I kept plugging away, and I basically wanted to minimise the amount of time I had to walk for. So I kept running, and I thought I'll just stop when it actually gets to the point that, you can't run. Fortunately, after 10-15 minutes, the pain sort of subsided. I think I was kind of distracted by the fact that I got back down to the end of the loop where all my friends and family were. People were shouting my name, and obviously things were still going reasonably well. Starting the second loop, the sort of heart pain had kind of gone and things were back on. I was starting to overtake a few people, but not sure whether they were on first lap, second lap, etc., but was taking motivation from that. The pace had come back down to like 4:20, 4:30s. Second lap went really well. Late on in the second lap, I went past Joe's skipper, and we had a brief conversation for a few K. I got really excited because Joe asked me what lap I was on, and I said lap 2, and he said he was on lap 3, and I was expecting him to be on his last lap. And we were jogging together, well, jogging for him, we were doing 4:30s, and I thought if Joe stays with me for a lap and a half and I get to the end of the third lap with Joe, he'll obviously disappear down the finish chute. I'll only have 10-12k left on my own, and I thought that was how the day was then going to play out. Joe then kicked on after he'd got moving again. It seems like he kicked on to jump into a portaloo, and that was it. I didn't see him for the rest of the day, which was a bit annoying. Got onto the third lap and felt really good. I'd been having, I'd had 90 grams of carbs, like a whole gel at that point, and a caffeine gel, and I'd been hitting the Red Bull and water. But unfortunately on the third lap, as I was starting to feel good and I was starting to ask people that were supporting me what position I was in my age group, sort of thinking that actually I could race here and find a few more positions maybe, they'd run out of ice and in particular cold water on the course, and they were starting to hand out warm sparkling water with no ice, which is possibly the worst combination there is when you're running in 29-30 degree heat, you're late into a marathon. And I went into hydration mode, focused purely on taking as much fluid as I could at the aid stations and trying to cool myself down. And by doing that, I completely forgot about eating and carb mode. And I didn't eat anything for the last 90 minutes or so. And that basically explains why I had a pretty dreadful fourth lap. As someone who eats a lot, I had such a high carb intake on the bike. I'd nailed my nutrition up to about an hour and a half into the marathon, and then really kind of made a rookie error by just forgetting to have my gels. I even had them stuffed inside me. I even had a 90 gram gel in a special needs bag that I never picked up, and that really cost me. So the fourth lap was a bit of a struggle. There was a lot of run walking. I kind of walked every aid station, but kind of managed to run in between them all. But I was still getting relatively good feedback that I was sitting in 15th, 16th in my age group. Got to the last 4k, and it is a miserable 4k in Nice because it's the first time I allowed myself to look down the coastline and try and spot where the finish line was. And you realise it's a good 20-25 minutes away, and it doesn't ever look like it's getting any closer. So at that point, Fraser came back past me, Donald came past me, who was having an absolute stormer, and I was just trudging away, trying to hope that some of these lads that were in the sort of 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th place in the age group were also struggling. Finally got to the last 2k. Somebody had shouted that I was still 15th. Which I was questioning myself, but I decided to try and just run as hard as I can just to try and, top 15 sounds way better than top 20. Managed to drag myself to the finish line. I did see two guys come past me quite late on, and both of them, it appears, were in my age group, which was quite annoying. But managed to get myself to the finish line 9:53, I think. 20th in my age group, 67th overall. A significant improvement on, although you can't directly compare Kona to Nice, but they're the only two World Championships I've done at this sort of level. I was 360th in Kona, something like that, when I did it. It was 9:51, so it's a very similar time, but this shows how hard Nice is. People were talking it's between 45 minutes to an hour harder than a normal, very similar time, but way further up the field. I wouldn't say that was because the field wasn't as strong. If you look at some of the times the top guys did, especially if you remove the ones that have been done for doping that are still allowed to race, there are some very impressive athletes racing in the age group field who are running sub-3 marathons off bikes like that, which is impressive. Happy days. Nice as a whole, loved the race, loved the atmosphere. The course is fantastic, like it's a proper course. Lots of people say that, an honest course, proper course, etc. But just even the views and the climbs, etc. Like nothing's that steep, it's just hard. You do have to be mentally focused all day. There isn't any let up on that course. As a World Championships, yes, it worked. Would I do Nice again as a World Championships? Probably not. For me, the fact that the race exists in June, I think ruins it. I think if Ironman want to have a World Championship race that is split, which is crap, you know, split men and women, etc. I think it's got to be a unique venue. The thing that was missing for me was when you get off the plane in Kona, you know that you can only do this race if you qualify. And yes, you can only do the World Champs in Nice if you qualify, but if you really wanted to do the race and you failed to qualify or whatever, and you wanted to do Nice, you can come do it in June and arguably pay significantly less money. So yes, it worked well. It seems like the pro men's race was great and sort of the best athletes rose to the top, but it is missing that buzz, that thing that you can't describe in words. Right then, that's the long-winded wrap up of my race. Well done for making it this far in the video. I'm now firmly in off-season mode, so the next couple of weeks, or the last week in particular, I've done nothing. I'm probably going to do nothing for another week, and I won't start training properly until October, November. Apart from Kona next year, which I have already qualified for, I have no idea what the rest of the year looks like. I'm obviously taking my career break from the end of Jan for 6 months, so a lot of the racing I do will probably be in April, May time. But yeah, TBC on what that looks like. I've got my famous bucket hat on. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you for some off-season training.